Hello everyone, Tracy Sizemore. I'm here to answer your deep dive questions about Hong Cluster. So one of the questions I do get a lot actually is, can the Hong Cluster go dark? And the answer is yes. There is something that I talk about a lot with regard to the Hong Cluster, and that is the optimistic idea behind it. It is an optimistic setting, but I want to explain why. It's not necessarily that everything is perfect or that we've solved all our problems, because that's not really what the Hong Cluster is about. It's more that even though we still have problems, even though we are still human, and we are beautifully human at that, we still have hope that we can rise above those problems, that we can solve them, that one day we will figure this out. And even if we're not figuring it out right now, that we can figure it out in the future. And that goes for everything from human-made problems like wars and hunger and thirst and othering to the more existential problems like alien threats from another dimension. Hong Cluster's optimism is about hope. It's about believing that we can solve the problems that we're faced with together. And in that sense, Hong Cluster can go very dark. And there are two big fulcrums around which you can think of a dark game versus an optimistic game. One is the physical or the technological things that can go wrong. So in the Hong Cluster, there's plenty of that. We still exist in space, and space is dangerous, and the Hong Cluster doesn't ignore that. There are a lot of sci-fi settings that eschew space as not important, like this is just a setting. It's not really a very dangerous place, but in Hong Cluster, that's not true. We have a lot of technology that has made space a much more livable place and a much more safe place, but that technology can go wrong. So there are four main pieces of technology that kind of keep things safe in the Hong Cluster. One of those things is artificial gravity. It doesn't sound like much, but artificial gravity helps us get off planets. It helps us get safely back on planets. It allows us to ignore some of the orbital mechanics and physics problems that are associated with space travel. If artificial gravity goes wrong, all of a sudden those things are back into play and we're in a dangerous situation. Another one is hyperdrive travel. So the Christum drive and the Seaghost drive, it allows us to travel at 6 light years per day. That's 6 times the speed of light can travel in a year per day. If that goes wrong, and it can, you're stranded out there. You might as well be a little fly on Earth trying to fly its way to the sun. It's not going to happen. If your Christum gets consumed, if your Seaghost disappears, you are on your own. And the only thing you can do is either fix it or call for help. And that leads us to the third thing, communication. This is another thing that a lot of sci-fi settings sort of gloss over and don't think about. But communication is a very well thought out subject in the Hong Cluster. It's been developed over years, over the last 600 years that we've been traveling through hyperspace. At first, there was no faster than light communication in human space in the Hong Cluster. Once you went out there, you could not communicate back to Earth. Then they developed gravity wave communication so that signals could travel 20 light years per day. That was better, but not as good as what we have it now, which is the Draxel Communication Network. It's why it's such a game changer. It's instant communication without any time lag. There are limitations to it, but you can then get help. If you're stranded in space, your Christum drive's gone down, you can call somebody on the other end of a Draxel who's designated to take calls like this, and they will help you. They will send out somebody to help you. It might take a couple days, but they'll get somebody out there. When this goes down, and it can, that is a huge problem. And finally, the last one is energy. We learned how to take advantage of geothermic energy on Calipo. We've learned how to harness the heavily electrified ionosphere on Edenic. We've got nicrayon-based batteries, which can hold lots and lots of energy. We've got fusion cores in spaceships. These things can go wrong. They cannot work. They can be destroyed, and all of a sudden you're out there on your own with no energy whatsoever. That's a really scary situation when you're in space, there's no air, it's freezing, and there's radiation everywhere. This is the kind of stuff that can turn Hong Cluster dark really quickly. But then there's a second fulcrum of horror that you can take advantage of. There's the failure of technology, and that's one thing, but there's also the failure of civilization, and that's another thing. And what I mean by failure of civilization is that if you break down, you signal for help and no one comes, not because they can't, but because they don't care. That's a failure of civilization. And there are examples of that on a limited basis all around the Hung cluster. Preserve is against linked machines. They're against the NEX. There's conflict between Edenic and Tract, freedom versus safety. There's disagreements of point of view that can lead to humans being human and starting to discount or discredit their fellow human beings, and then othering them, and all of a sudden we have a fight on our hands. Earth versus Edenic. There's generational bad blood there. There's a breakdown of civilization. And even the blinding itself, where it's forcing this breakdown of civilization, that's the real horror of the Hung cluster, and it's all over the place. And you can play with it too. I would just caution you to be careful with it, because it can really mess people up. I think my favorite idea as an example of what to do when the Hung cluster goes dark is to imagine what would happen if the Transcendence Plot Point campaign failed. What happens if you are not able to inoculate the human race against the blinding? That is really scary to me, and it's also an opportunity to me. It's a way to show what the human race is capable of when the worst has happened, and now we have to dig our way out of it. I want to write that someday. So that, I hope, gives you some examples of the design philosophy and idealism behind the Hung cluster. And if you're predisposed to go kind of dark and dystopic, there's plenty of ways to do that in this setting, if that's what you want to do. So that's enough for today, and I'll talk to you next time.